First contact fears. The grand chamber of the Galactic conclave fell silent as Dr. Zilix approached the podium. The diminutive Arcturian's iridescent scales shimmered under the ambient light as he adjusted the holographic display with his three-fingered hands. Representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations watched with varying degrees of interest, their appendages and sensory organs focused on the xenobiologist who had called this emergency session. Esteemed delegates, Zilix began, his voice translator modulating to a respectful tone. I thank you for convening on such short notice. What I present today may fundamentally alter our understanding of galactic security. Ambassador Thrax of the Volunian Empire shifted his massive armored frame with obvious impatience. The conclave has pressing matters to attend to, Doctor. The border dispute with the Cronus Collective will seem trivial compared to what we now face. Zilix interrupted, a breach of protocol that sent murmurs through the assembly. 3 cycles ago, our deep space survey vessel detected radio transmissions from a previously uncontacted system in Sector 8721. We have made first contact with a species calling themselves humans. Another pre-FTL civilization, asked Kavoth, the gelatinous representative of the Medusan confluence, hardly warrants an emergency session. Zilix's scale color deepened to a troubled azure. That was our initial assessment as well. But after thorough study, I can confidently state that these humans represent the most dangerous potential threat our galactic community has ever encountered. The chamber erupted in skeptical chatter. Ambassador Thrax's laughter boomed above the noise. Look at the holographic display. These creatures are pitiful. No natural armor, no claws, weak musculature, limited sensory capacity. What possible threat could they pose? Zilix waited for order to return before continuing. Their physical appearance is precisely what makes them so dangerous. They have evolved on what we classify as a death world, a planet with extreme environmental pressures, high gravity, aggressive fauna, unpredictable climate patterns, and intense competition for resources. Yet they appear fragile. The xenobiologist manipulated the holographic controls. This contradiction is the key to understanding them. They aren't merely survivors of a death world. They're conquerors of it. The display shifted to show human skeletal and muscular systems. Their endoskeletal structure provides remarkable recovery capability from injuries that would permanently disable most species. Their cardiovascular system allows for extreme endurance. Their neural architecture processes fear as a challenge rather than a deterrent. Zilix displayed footage of human athletic competitions, medical procedures, and military training exercises. The delegates watched as humans deliberately subjected themselves to pain, exhaustion, and hardship voluntarily. They call this pushing their limits, Zilix explained. They intentionally stress their systems to strengthen them. Consider what this means: a species that uses pain as a pathway to improvement rather than a warning to retreat. Ambassador Lear of the Photonic Collective, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline vessel, pulsed with confusion. Many species engage in training rituals. This hardly seems. With respect, Ambassador, Zilix interrupted again. No known species approaches training as humans do. They simulate warfare constantly. They deliberately break down their muscle tissue through exercise, so it will rebuild stronger. They expose themselves to controlled danger for entertainment, and this is merely their physical aspect. The hologram shifted to display human warfare throughout their history. The delegates watched in growing unease as the images showed humans fighting across millennia, their technologies evolving while their determination remained constant. Humans have been at war with themselves for their entire recorded history, Zilix continued. While most sentient species evolved away from internal conflict as they developed technology, humans have used technology to become more efficient killers. Their weapons development curve is unprecedented. From simple projectiles to nuclear devastation in less than 500 cycles, all before achieving space travel. Admiral Zorn of the Dracarian fleet leaned forward, his predatory eyes narrowing. You speak of their past. What of their current capabilities? They possess approximately 15,000 nuclear weapons, have developed rudimentary AI systems, basic genetic modification technology, and early quantum computing, Zilix replied. Their space technology remains limited, but they've begun establishing outposts on other planets in their system. Their rate of technological advancement is exponential, particularly in times of conflict. So they're dangerous to themselves, Ambassador Thrax dismissed. Let them destroy each other before they become a problem for us. That is precisely the most dangerous aspect, Zilix countered, his scales now pulsing with urgent crimson patterns. Despite constant warfare, they haven't destroyed themselves. Instead, they've developed a unique psychological characteristic. They learn from conflict. They adapt. They become stronger through adversity. The xenobiologist displayed neural scans. Unlike most sentient life, human brains are rewarded biochemically for overcoming challenges rather than avoiding them. Their neurotransmitter systems produce pleasure responses when they solve problems, discover new information, or triumph over adversity. They are literally addicted to challenge. The display shifted to show images of human emergency responders rushing into burning buildings, soldiers throwing themselves on explosives to save comrades, and explorers venturing into extreme environments. They risked death not just for genetic relatives, but for abstract concepts like country, freedom, and honor, Zilix explained. They form intense pack bonds that extend beyond their species. They have sacrificial behaviors that defy evolutionary logic. Admiral Zorn's expression had transformed from skepticism to concern. You still haven't explained why this warrants emergency status, Doctor. They're confined to their solar system. For now, Zilix agreed. But our projections indicate they'll develop FTL travel within 30 cycles. And here's what troubles me most. Despite their constant internal conflicts, when faced with external threats, humans demonstrate remarkable unity. Our simulations suggest that first contact, especially if perceived as threatening, would instantly unify their entire species. The holographic display showed footage of human responses to natural disasters, where former enemies work together against common threats. And then there's this, Zilix said softly, displaying images of human fiction, books, films, and games depicting alien invasions and humanity's response. For centuries, they'd been psychologically preparing themselves for conflict with extraterrestrial life. They'd been imagining how to defeat technologically superior alien species before they even confirmed we exist. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "What are you proposing, Doctor?" asked Kavoth of the Medusan confluence. "Preemptive strike. Quarantine." Zilix's scales faded to a contemplative purple. Neither would be effective. Attacking would merely confirm their fears and unite them against us. Quarantine would only delay the inevitable while allowing their military technology to advance unchecked. "Then what?" demanded Ambassador Thrax. "Controlled contact," Zilix replied. "Careful, deliberate diplomatic engagement that positions the Conclave as potential allies rather than threats. We must approach humans with respect and caution, not as primitives to be studied or resources to be exploited, but as equals with unique capabilities." The doctor's scales shifted to a resolute gold. "Because make no mistake, esteemed delegates, if we make enemies of humans, we will be facing an adversary unlike any we've encountered before. They are Death World apex predators with the intelligence to build starships, the tenacity to endure any hardship, and the psychological makeup to never, ever surrender." Admiral Zorn rose to his full, impressive height. "I propose we form a first contact diplomatic corps immediately, with military contingencies in place. Dr. Zilix, you will lead the scientific division." "I concur," said Ambassador Lear, her crystalline form pulsing with solemn light. "The humans must be approached with the utmost care." As the conclave moved to discussion and action, Zilix gazed at the holographic display, still showing the seemingly fragile humans. In their unassuming appearance lay perhaps their greatest advantage, the tendency of others to underestimate them. It was a mistake the Conclave could not afford to make. The fate of galactic peace might depend on it. The human variable. 5 cycles after first contact, Commander Akari Tanaka stood at the viewport of the GCS Intrepid, watching the massive Conclave warships maneuver alongside Earth's modest fleet. The joint military exercise, the first of its kind, had been tense from the start, with several alien species visibly uncomfortable serving alongside humans. "They still don't trust us," remarked Captain Miguel Santos, joining her at the viewport. "Can't say I blame them. If Dr. Zilich's report hadn't been leaked to our intelligence agencies, we might have approached first contact very differently." Akari nodded. The xenobiologist's assessment of humanity as a potentially dangerous species had initially caused outrage among Earth's leadership, but ultimately led to a more measured response when the Conclave's diplomatic vessels appeared in orbit. Instead of panic or hostility, Earth had met the aliens with cautious diplomacy, a response that had surprised the Conclave representatives. "Admiral Zorn requests your presence in the tactical briefing," said the ship's eye. "The simulation parameters have changed. Again." Miguel sighed. "That's the 3rd modification today." "The Dracarians are testing us," Akari replied as they headed toward the briefing room. "They keep changing the parameters to see how we adapt." The tactical chamber was already filled with representatives from 7 species when they arrived. Admiral Zorn, the massive reptilian Dracarian who commanded the joint fleet, acknowledged them with a respectful inclination of his head crest. "Commander Tanaka, Captain Santos, we've received intelligence that changes our mission profile," Zorn announced. "The Exik-Theri incursion into Protected Zone 12 is not, as we believed, a typical resource raid. They appear to be testing defenses for a major offensive." Holographic displays showed a distant star system where insectoid ships had breached the territory of a pre-FTL civilization under Conclave protection. "The Exik-Theri have never been so bold," remarked Hilax, the Medusan tactical officer, her gelatinous form pulsing with concern. "They typically avoid direct confrontation with Conclave forces, which means they believe they have an advantage we don't know about," Akari observed, studying the tactical display, "something that makes them confident they can win." Admiral Zorn fixed her with his predatory gaze. "Precisely my assessment, Commander. The exercise is canceled. We're deploying as a combat force immediately." A ripple of surprise ran through the alien officers. Captain Santos stepped forward. "Admiral, Earth's authorities haven't authorized our vessels for actual combat operations. This was supposed to be a training exercise." "I understand your position, Captain," Zorn replied. "Your ships may withdraw to Earth, but we must respond immediately to prevent the slaughter of millions of innocents." Akari exchanged glances with Miguel. Earth's ships were outnumbered and outgunned by the Conclave fleet, but the principle mattered. Humanity couldn't allow its first major interstellar action to be dictated by others. "Request permission to contact Earth Command for emergency authorization," Akari said. 10 minutes maximum." "Granted," Zorn replied. "But we depart in 15 minutes with or without you." As Akari established the quantum link to Earth Command, Miguel studied the tactical data more closely. "There's something off about the Exik-Theri formation," he murmured to Tekka, the Arcturian sensor officer. "Why spread their forces so thin across the system?" The diminutive alien scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. "Perhaps they seek to maximize resource extraction efficiency. Or they're not actually focused on resources at all," Miguel replied. "Commander, I think we're looking at a diversion." Akari looked up from her communication. "Explain." Miguel manipulated the holographic display. "The Exik-Theri ships are dispersed in a pattern that maximizes visibility but minimizes actual threat. They want to be seen. They're drawing Conclave forces away from something else." Admiral Zorn joined them at the display. "If not Protected Zone 12, then what is their actual target?" The question hung in the air as Earth Command's response came through. Full authorization for combat operations with the stipulation that human vessels maintained operational autonomy. Permission to access the Conclave Stellar Database, Akari requested. When Zorn nodded, she began cross-referencing recent HFY theory movements with nearby systems. A pattern emerged. Here, she said, highlighting a seemingly empty region of space. The HFY theory fleet movements over the past cycle all create a deliberate gap in sensor coverage of this sector. What's located there? Nothing of strategic value, Tekka replied. Mostly uninhabitable systems and... The Arcturian stopped suddenly, scales flashing alarm red. The Nexus Gateway prototype. Admiral Zorn's posture stiffened. Impossible. That information is classified at the highest levels. Then you have a security breach, Miguel said bluntly. Because the HFY theory clearly know about it. The Nexus Gateway. Akari had heard rumors about the revolutionary transportation technology the Conclave was developing. A way to move entire fleets instantaneously across the galaxy would transform warfare completely. Zorn made a swift decision. Divert 90% of our forces to protected Zone 12 as planned. The Intrepid and 2 Dracarian cruisers will investigate the Nexus sector. A minimal force, questioned Kilax, if the commander's assessment is correct. Then we need speed and surprise, not overwhelming power, Zorn interrupted. And humans have demonstrated remarkable effectiveness in asymmetric warfare scenarios. 6 hours later, the Intrepid dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Nexus sector, sensors in passive mode to avoid detection. The 2 Dracarian cruisers flanked the human vessel as they drifted toward the coordinates of the secret Conclave project. Multiple contacts, reported Lieutenant Commander Olivia Chin from the sensor station. HFY theory signatures, at least 15 vessels surrounding a large structure. The tactical display confirmed Akari's suspicion. The main HFY theory fleet had bypassed protected Zone 12 entirely, focusing instead on capturing the prototype gateway. They've already breached the station's outer defenses, Miguel observed. Estimate 20 minutes before they access the core technology. Admiral Zorn, who had transferred to the Intrepid for the mission, studied the display grimly. Even if we alert the main fleet now, they cannot arrive in time. We are outgunned 3-1. Then we don't fight conventionally, Akari said. An idea forming. Lieutenant Chen, what's the composition of the nearby stellar matter? Rich in ionizable gases and free-floating metals, Commander. The nearby nebula is quite dense. Akari smiled. Perfect. Captain Santos, remember that training exercise in the Kuiper Belt, the one where we were outnumbered 5-1. Miguel's eyes lit with understanding. The Hornet's Nest maneuver. Admiral Zorn, we need to modify our shield configurations to create an electromagnetic pulse wave. The Dracarian looked skeptical but intrigued. Explain. As Akari outlined the plan, the alien admiral's expression shifted from doubt to cautious approval. Your species' approach to warfare continues to surprise me, Commander. The tactic is unorthodox, but theoretically sound. Unorthodox is humanity's specialty, Miguel replied with a grim smile. We call it thinking outside the box. 20 minutes later, the 3 Allied ships executed a synchronized FTL microjump, appearing directly in the midst of the HFY theory fleet. Before the insectoid vessels could respond, the ships discharged massive electromagnetic pulses while jettisoning specially modified sensor drones into the nebula gases. The result was spectacular. A cascading chain reaction of ionized particles that created a temporary artificial electromagnetic storm. The HFY theory ships, with their sensitive biological electronic interfaces, were immediately crippled as their systems overloaded. Phase 2 ordered Akari as the Intrepid maneuvered through the chaos. While the Dracarian cruisers engaged the few functioning enemy vessels, the human ship targeted the captured station with precision strikes, targeting the docking mechanisms rather than the ships themselves. Boarding teams ready, reported Miguel. Though I still think this part of the plan is excessively risky. The gateway technology cannot be damaged in a conventional attack, Admiral Zorn reminded him. Commander Tanaka's approach, while dangerous, offers the highest probability of success. Akari checked her combat armor one last time before joining the boarding team in the launch bay. The HFY don't expect a direct assault. Their shipboard security will be minimal, with most forces concentrated on accessing the gateway controls. The boarding pods launched, crossing the void between the Intrepid and the station in seconds. As predicted, they encountered minimal resistance at the entry points, but that would change quickly once the HFY realized what was happening. Remember, Akari told her team as they breached the station's hull, we need to reach the central control hub before they can activate the gateway or destroy the control systems. What followed was a desperate race through the labyrinthine corridors of the station. The human boarding teams, trained in close-quarters combat, moved with a speed and adaptability that seemed to confuse the HFY defenders. Where the insectoids expected conventional tactics, the humans used unpredictable approaches, splitting into smaller teams, using diversionary tactics, and exploiting environmental features for cover and concealment. Admiral Zorn, monitoring from the Intrepid, observed with growing appreciation how the humans seemed to improvise constantly, communicating changes and adaptations with minimal verbal exchange. It was as if they instinctively understood each other's intentions. They function like a hive mind without sacrificing individual initiative, he remarked to Miguel. A paradoxical combination. We call it unit cohesion, the captain replied. Trained together long enough, humans develop almost telepathic coordination. The moment of crisis came when Akari's team reached the central hub, only to find that HFY had set the gateway to overload, a suicide move that would destroy not only the station, but create a subspace rupture that could devastate half the sector. We have 3 minutes before critical failure, reported Lieutenant Lee, the team's engineer, examining the alien controls. And I can't read these configurations. The interface is bioorganic. Through their neural link, Admiral Zorn provided unexpected assistance. Commander, the HFY use pheromonal signals as secondary authentication. The control surface responds to chemical signatures. Akari made a swift decision that epitomized human adaptability. Chen, your synthetic biology background. Can you repurpose our medical nanites to mimic HFY pheromones? Theoretically, Chen replied, already accessing her medical kit. But I'll need a sample. Akari pointed to the dead HFY commander on the deck. Will that work? What followed was an impromptu fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology that astonished the watching Dracarians. Using battlefield medical equipment meant for emergency trauma care, Shen reprogrammed maintenance nanites to synthesize the complex pheromones needed to authenticate the shutdown sequence. With 12 seconds to spare, the gateway's overload sequence aborted. Hours later, with the station secured and the remaining HFY vessels in retreat, Admiral Zorn formally addressed the human officers in the Intrepid's briefing room. Today I witnessed something I had previously only read about in Dr. Zilich's reports, the Dracarian admitted. Your species' capacity for adaptive problem-solving under extreme pressure is unsettling and impressive in equal measure. Just doing our job, Admiral, Akari replied modestly. No, Zorn countered. What I observed goes beyond training or duty. Your people embraced a chaotic situation that would paralyze most species with fear. You didn't simply respond to challenges. You appeared to thrive on them. The Admiral's gaze moved around the room, studying each human officer. Most concerning of all, you seemed to be enjoying yourselves at moments of peak danger. An uncomfortable silence fell as the humans exchanged glances, unable to deny the observation. The rush of combat, the challenge of impossible odds. These were things humans had evolved to confront, sometimes even to relish. The Conclave has underestimated humanity, Admiral Zorn concluded, not as a threat, but as an asset. I will be recommending full integration of human forces into conclave defense operations with independent command authority. As the meeting adjourned, Miguel joined Akari at the viewport, watching the stars. You realize what happened today. We've just been recognized as the galaxy's warriors. Akari nodded slowly. That's what concerns me. The more they see what we can do, the more they'll rely on us to do it. I wonder if Earth is ready for that responsibility. Ready or not, Miguel replied. The galaxy just discovered humanity's greatest export, our capacity for warfare. The question is, how will we shape that role? The answer would come sooner than either of them expected. Predators among stars. The emergency alarm shattered the pre-dawn quiet of Outpost Horizon, Earth's first extrasolar colony. Brigadier General Akari Tanaka, promoted after the Nexus incident, rolled from her bunk already reaching for her neural interface. Status report, she demanded, connecting to the colony's command network. Multiple unidentified vessels approaching from the Cygnus arm, responded the AI. Configuration unknown, not matching any conclave registry. Akari was fully alert now. In the 3 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Conclave, they had taken on an increasingly prominent role in military operations. Earth now maintained defensive outposts along the borders of Conclave space, with Horizon serving as the primary human military base. Alert status Alpha, she ordered, striding toward the command center. Deploy reconnaissance drones and notify Conclave Central Command. By the time she reached the operations hub, the situation had deteriorated rapidly. The holographic display showed over 30 vessels approaching, far more than a typical patrol or exploratory force. Analysis suggests these are Vrex vessels, reported Major Kowalski, her intelligence officer. Matches partial profiles from the Conclave database, but they're supposed to be extinct. Evidently not, Akari replied grimly, studying the approaching formation. The Vrex, according to limited Conclave records, had been a highly aggressive species that disappeared from known space nearly a millennium ago after a catastrophic war with several now-member species. Message incoming, announced the communications officer. Audio only, unknown language. Run it through the xenolinguistic matrix, Akari ordered. The message that emerged from the translator was chilling in its simplicity. Submit or perish. You occupy Vrex hunting grounds. Before Akari could formulate a response, the lead Vrex vessels opened fire on Horizon's outer sensor array, destroying it instantly. So much for diplomacy, she muttered. Defensive positions. Alert Earth Command and request immediate reinforcement. The next 6 hours became a desperate holding action as the colony's defenses, substantial but not designed for a full-scale invasion, struggled to repel the Vrex assault. Horizon's shields absorbed the initial bombardment, but power reserves dropped rapidly. Conclave forces responding, reported the communications officer. ETA 4 hours. We need to buy time, Akari decided. Implement Thermopylae protocol. The command staff exchanged uneasy glances. Thermopylae, named after the ancient Earth battle, was a last resort strategy that had never been field-tested. It involved deliberate sacrifice of defensive positions to channel enemy forces into predetermined killing zones. As the protocol activated, Akari opened a direct channel to Admiral Zorn. We have a Vrex incursion at Horizon. Implementing delaying tactics but require immediate heavy support. The Dracarian's voice was grim. We're mobilizing all available forces. The Vrex were thought extinct. Their return threatens the entire sector. Hold as long as you can, Commander. Understood, Akari replied. Be advised, we're employing unconventional tactics. I would expect nothing less from humans, came the response, with what might have been grim humor. On the tactical display, Akari watched as sections of Horizon's orbital defenses powered down sequentially, creating apparent vulnerabilities that the Vrex forces quickly moved to exploit. It was a dangerous gamble, sacrificing outer defenses to conserve power and concentrate forces. "They're taking the bait," observed Major Kowalski. "Vrex vessels moving into primary target zones." Akari nodded. "Spring the trap." Hidden gravitational mines activated simultaneously, disabling several Vrex vessels instantly. The remaining ships, now committed to their attack vectors, found themselves caught in overlapping fields of fire from concentrated defense batteries. "First wave neutralized," reported the tactical officer. "But our power reserves are critical, and their second wave is adjusting formation. They are learning our patterns." "Then we change the pattern," Akari decided. "Activate ground forces. Prepare for surface engagement." This decision, to allow enemy forces to reach the planetary surface, violated conventional defensive doctrine. The standard approach would be to maintain orbital superiority at all costs. But Akari had studied Earth's military history extensively. Sometimes victory came from surrendering the expected battlefield to fight on terrain of your own choosing. As Vrex landing craft breached the atmosphere, Earth's defensive forces executed a plan that baffled their alien enemies. Rather than establishing a perimeter around the colony, the human forces dispersed into the surrounding wilderness in small mobile units, seemingly abandoning the settlement. The Vrex, according to their intercepted communications, interpreted this as retreat or surrender. They concentrated their forces on securing the colony infrastructure, expecting to find the humans cowering within shelters. Instead, they found empty buildings rigged with surveillance systems that mapped their movements and analyzed their tactical patterns in real time. Meanwhile, human forces observed from concealed positions, gathering intelligence on Vrex physiology, weapons, and communication methods. "They're bipedal, but with a quadrupedal running stance," noted Lieutenant Rivera from her observation post. "Enhanced olfactory sensing. They're literally sniffing out our trails. Probable evolved predator species." "Confirmed," added Sergeant Chen from another position. "They're using pack hunting formations. Leave elements flush targets toward waiting ambush groups." Akari absorbed this information, a plan forming. "They're hunters. But so were our ancestors, and we've had millennia to perfect our methods." For the next 2 hours, human forces engaged in what would later be documented in Conclave military archives as ghost warfare. Small units would appear, engage Vrex forces briefly, then disappear into the landscape. Traps were set using the environment, pitfalls, triggered rock slides, and improvised explosive devices placed at choke points. The Vrex, accustomed to direct confrontation, grew increasingly disoriented and frustrated. Their communications, now partially decoded, revealed confusion bordering on superstitious fear. "The prey moves like predators," one Vrex commander transmitted. "They strike and vanish. They know the hunting methods." From her mobile command post, Akari coordinated the asymmetric response, constantly shifting tactics to prevent the Vrex from adapting. When the aliens employed thermal scanning, the humans used the geothermal features of the planet to mask their signatures. When the Vrex deployed airborne scouts, the humans used the dense forest canopy for concealment. "Conclave fleet arriving in orbit," announced the communications officer. "Admiral Zorn requests situation update. Tell him ground forces are engaged in asymmetric resistance." Akari replied. "Request precision orbital support on designated targets only. We're too intermixed for broad bombardment." The arrival of Conclave forces shifted the space battle decisively, but the ground situation remained precarious. The human defense had cost the Vrex significant casualties, but at a heavy price. Nearly 30% of Horizon's military personnel were dead or wounded. As the combined Conclave Earth fleet secured orbital control, Admiral Zorn and a mixed-species rapid response force prepared to deploy to the surface. But before they launched, Akari transmitted a surprising request. "Request permission to complete ground operation independently. We've developed effective counter-tactics, and introducing new forces may disrupt our operational rhythm." There was a long pause before Zorn responded. "Explain your reasoning, General." The Vrex are adapting to human tactics, Akari replied. Introducing multiple species with different combat doctrines now would give them new patterns to analyze. We have them psychologically destabilized. They're fighting with increasing irrationality. Another pause. Very well. You have 12 hours to resolve the ground situation before we intervene. Akari gathered her remaining command staff. The Vrex communication patterns suggest their society uses hunting prowess as a dominance hierarchy. Their leaders are their strongest warriors. You're suggesting we challenge their leadership directly? Asked Major Kowalski. Exactly, Akari confirmed. We issue a challenge they cannot refuse without losing status. We've observed their command ship landing in Sector 7. That's where we focus our attack. What followed was a precision operation targeting the Vrex command structure directly. Rather than continuing the dispersed harassment tactics, Akari concentrated her remaining forces for a single decisive strike against the alien leadership. The human assault began with a diversionary attack that drew out the Vrex perimeter forces. Once engaged, the main human strike team infiltrated the command compound, targeting communication systems and power generation, rather than attempting to defeat the numerically superior force directly. We don't need to win by killing them all, Akari had instructed. We win by breaking their organizational structure. When the Vrex War Alpha emerged to personally lead the defense, Major Kowalski's sniper team was waiting. The precision shot didn't kill the alien commander but incapacitated him, a calculated move. In the confusion that followed, human forces secured the Vrex communication hub and transmitted surrender terms directly to the entire invasion force, along with footage of their wounded leader. What happened next would become legendary in Conclave military academies. Rather than surrender, the Vrex War Alpha demanded single combat with the human commander, a challenge Akari accepted despite her staff's objections. Their culture won't accept defeat without demonstration of superior prowess, she explained. If I refuse, they'll fight to the last warrior. The combat arena was a cleared area near the Vrex landing zone. Admiral Zorn and other Conclave representatives observed remotely, as did the remaining Vrex forces and human defenders. The terms were simple. If Akari won, the Vrex would withdraw immediately. If the War Alpha won, the humans would evacuate Horizon. The Vrex commander stood nearly 2 meters tall, with a chidnous exoskeleton and natural weaponry that included razor-sharp claws and tusks. By any objective assessment, a human should have been physically outmatched. What the Vrex failed to understand, and what the watching Conclave representatives observed with fascination, was that humans had evolved beyond relying on natural physical advantages. Thousands of years of warfare had taught them to overcome biological limitations through technology, strategy, and psychological warfare. Akari entered the combat circle wearing standard military armor and carrying only a combat knife. When the War Alpha charged with predictable aggression, she didn't attempt to match strength with strength. Instead, she employed a fighting style evolved from Earth's martial arts traditions, using the alien's momentum against him, targeting joint articulations, and striking at neurological vulnerabilities identified during earlier engagements. The combat lasted less than 4 minutes. When it ended, the Vrex leader lay immobilized, defeated not by superior strength, but by superior technique and analytical thinking. You fought without honor, the War Alpha growled as Akari stood over him. I fought to win, she replied simply. There is no honor in death when survival is possible. Order your forces to withdraw. The Vrex complied, their ships departing Horizon's orbit under close Conclave supervision. In the aftermath, Admiral Zorn personally landed to assess the situation and debrief Akari. Your tactics were unconventional, the Dracarian noted as they walked through the damaged colony. We were outnumbered and outgunned, Akari replied. Conventional tactics would have resulted in total defeat. Yet you deliberately allowed enemy forces to land, Zorn observed. Most defensive doctrines consider that unacceptable. Human history is filled with successful defenses that surrendered initial positions to secure final victory. Akari explained. From Thermopylae to the Battle of Britain to the Second Martian Conflict, we adapt to circumstances rather than following rigid doctrine. The Admiral was silent for a moment. The Conclave Security Council has been monitoring humanity's military operations closely. Some members express concern about your